Hello, and welcome to the podcast Buffy and the Art of Story. If you love Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you love creating stories or just taking them apart to see how they work, you're in the right place. Today, rather than recapping an episode of Buffy and talking about its story elements, I'll be looking at the top 5 and bottom 5 Buffy episodes of all time. I am Lisa M. Lilly, novelist and story expert, and obviously this is a very subjective list, so I'd love to hear your lists. If you would like to email me at buffystorypod@gmail.com or comment on YouTube or on Patreon if that is where you are listening. I decided to do this as a holiday episode. I hope you had a very happy and peaceful holiday season. And if you're listening to this on its air date to New Year's Eve, I wish you all a very happy new year. There will necessarily be spoilers in this episode because I'm talking about why I think these episodes work well and the whole of Buffy. And there'll be some spoilers for Angel as well. I try to keep them minor, but just be aware and proceed at your own risk. My top 5 Buffy episodes, in no particular order, include a couple two-parters. I'm counting those as one each. I think of the top 5 a little bit the way they say best friend is a tier, not a person. So the top 5 for me is a tier. I don't think I could pick just one, and my top 5 might vary depending when you catch me. But for sure, one of them is the two-part story with Faith in Buffy Season 4, This Year's Girl and Who Are You? I love these episodes. Most Faith episodes are among my favorites. I especially love this one because of the dynamic between Sarah Michelle Gellar and Eliza Dushku. Getting to see them play the other character in their own body is fantastic. And the story examines so many things about what makes us who we are as human beings, how you might change if you acted like yourself, but people treated you as if you were someone else, as both Buffy and Faith find out. And because it is such a character arc for Faith, plus the stories are really compelling and have a big effect on who both characters are going forward. The other two-parter I include is the season 2 finale, Becoming Parts 1 and 2. I struggled a bit with including this because while I do love the story as a whole, I recall there being some parts I don't always love rewatching. Whistler isn't a terribly developed character, the demon who is there to sort of guide Buffy. There's times he holds back info for no real reason, but the episode is so powerful, and it too says so much about life. There is that moment when Buffy races to find Kendra, and I think it is Whistler in voiceover says something about you can't see around the corners in life. You won't know what's coming. It's how you deal with what happens. And the end when Buffy is in the courtyard with Angel, or Angelus. He's Angelus at that point, and he says something like, no friends, no family, what do you have? Buffy shuts her eyes, he thrusts the sword, she claps her hands together and stops it and says, me. So very powerful and such a counterpoint to the overall narrative of the show, which is that Buffy is stronger and Buffy survives so long because she has those connections. At the same time, it tells us it is important that she also has that strength within herself. And then there are all the layers with Willow re-ensoling Angel, those moments when Buffy realizes Angel is back and she has to kill him anyway. So much heartbreak, so much drama, and so much exploring of what a Slayer is and what it means. Even Xander's moment of going to Buffy And he's about to tell her that Willow's trying to do the spell, and he doesn't. He says Willow's message is kick his ass. I have always read this, that he didn't tell her about the spell because he thought it might undermine her fighting, that she might hold back. I understand why other people see it as Xander being Xander and Xander being a jerk. And I love that ambiguity there. We don't know. There are so many layers. I do have one season 1 episode on the list, and that is Prophecy Girl, the finale of season 1. It is such a tightly written episode. Every moment counts, and it is a crossroads for Buffy. She did resist being the Slayer in the pilot of the series, and then she embraced it. But here, she faces her own death in a way that she has not done before. Her death is prophesized, and she quits. And it is such a strong moment when she says, I'm 16. I don't want to die. This has certainly been present, if not expressly stated throughout the season. But here it is. Here is the reality of what Buffy faces. It's so powerful because it is also a metaphor for life. You cannot stop life from moving forward. You can't freeze your life at an ideal time. 16 for me was certainly not an ideal time. I would have not wanted to freeze it, but whatever time for you is that time, it is facing that you cannot stop it, and it deals with mortality, that we can't stop death either. Now, Buffy is brought back from death. She dies in this episode. She comes back stronger. It is such a powerful episode because we do not expect Buffy to die. And it's powerful because of how she reacts to it on return, that having faced that fear, having quit and returned, she is stronger. She comes back to herself in a way, her quipping, facing the master. But it is more than that. When Buffy chooses to be the Slayer again, it is more than protecting her friends. In the pilot, she is moved to re-embrace being a Slayer because she does not want to see Willow in danger. In this episode, it's not just Willow, it is the world that Buffy is willing to live in, wants to live in. She has decided to quit. Willow calls her and has seen all this carnage that vampires caused, and Willow says something like it wasn't our world anymore, it was theirs. And this is the strongest moment for me because that's when Buffy basically makes the choice that she is the one person who might have the power to stop this. And even if it means she dies, she is going to make that choice. She is going to do everything that she can. It's a choice to say she does not want to continue in the world if it is going to be their world, and she could have stopped it. She's not going to be able to live with herself. I feel like it's the strongest statement of the show's philosophy. Buffy doesn't fight because the powers that be who appear in Angel tell her that she has to. She doesn't do it because there is some higher being that requires her to do it or to score points and get into heaven or whatever reasons there might be. She does it because she wants to do everything she can to make the world a place that is, if not entirely safe, is safer for humans. It is more of the world that she and her friends want to inhabit, that humanity can inhabit. The season 3 episode I chose, and I didn't pick these by season. I went through and looked at all the episodes to decide. I would have thought there'd be more from season 3 because I do love the Faith arc so much. And basically, there are just so many to choose from. It was very hard to pick a top 5. I went with The Wish among the top 5 because it is always a story that has spoken to me because it too explores who we are and who we're not and why. We see Buffy in an alternate universe where Giles was not her watcher. And while Faith does not appear in it, Buffy is much more like Faith in that story. And we see all of Sunnydale, how different it would be if Buffy wasn't there, what would happen to her friends, because, well, not quite her friend Cordelia has wished she never came to Sunnydale. Doesn't work out well for Cordelia, who ends up dead. It also doesn't work out well for Willow and Xander, who end up vampires. And this answers to any questions Buffy had, because she must wonder at times, is she doing her friends a favor? Has she dragged Willow and Xander into her world, putting them at risk? She does struggle with that. Yet this shows they would be much worse off without her. And Angel, of course, much different arc for him. I understand people who don't love the wish. It is bleak in many ways. I don't find it so, because even though Buffy herself does not prevail, Giles acts on faith and he brings the world back to what it should be. The other criticism I've heard of it is that you could lift it out and it would make no difference to the arc of the series, and that is true. Yet what we learn about the characters and who they are does resonate throughout the series. Also, we get Vampire Willow, and her next episode would make no sense without the wish, but mostly it's what we see about these characters. And I love seeing Xander as a vampire and Willow as a vampire. There are just so many intriguing things about it. Finally, Once More with Feeling, the musical episode, is in my top 5. I struggled with it a bit because while it does have a few flaws, I admire so much the skill in writing all these songs that move the story forward. I talked about it in the regular episode. This is not the type of musical where we have a story and then everyone stops and sings a song about what just happened or what's about to happen, or just giving us a character's interior thoughts, though we do get those. Each song, the characters, there's some movement in the story, there's some revelation, they discover some conflict. I think about Buffy singing about I've died twice and why should we care? What does it matter? And in that song is where Giles realizes Buffy is not just saying we're going to prevail, we can win together. That's why it doesn't matter, that Buffy is struggling with something, that Buffy does feel nothing matters, and he is more concerned about her. He picks up on more about her. I also love his song when he's throwing the knives at Buffy. It makes me cry every time when he says he's standing in her way. The Tara and Willow arc, when Tara realizes that Willow has used magic to erase her memories. So many key moments, so heartfelt, and the music is great and the songs are great. They go through my head all the time, so you can just listen to the album as well. Plus, as a whole, it moves the season forward. It isn't just an episode that is there to be an experiment. Now to my honorable mentions for the top 5. Intervention from season 5. That is the one where Spike has to face Glory, who's trying to find out who the key is. He resists. She beats him up very badly. The Buffy bot and Buffy and friends go in after Spike, afraid that he has told the truth, and Buffy has to kill that demon, that snake demon that Glory sent to find the key. This is where everyone finds out about the Buffy bot, so we get Buffy facing the bot, and that so powerful moment between Buffy and Spike when she pretends to be the Buffy bot. She kisses him, and we find out that Spike did it not to win points with Buffy. He didn't expect her to know, but to protect her and to protect Dawn. It is his first truly selfless act. He does it because he loves Buffy, but not because he thinks she'll find out about it, not to try to get something I also chose The Prom, the season 3 episode. I wavered on this a bit because I don't love the hellhounds that attack the prom, but Buffy getting that class protector award, such an emotional moment, and so important for Buffy to know that while mostly she gets no thanks, nobody knows what she's doing, that they have noticed. She thought no one was aware. She felt like an outcast. In a lot of ways, she is an outcast, yet they do recognize her. And we have some great moments with Giles and Buffy and Angel having that moment together. He's broken up with her, but he comes to dance with her at the prom to try to give her that one perfect high school moment. And I love that ultimately that perfect moment might not be about Buffy's romance with Angel, but about the recognition from her peers. Another podcast you might love is World Gone Wrong. World Gone Wrong is a cozy chat show hosted by best friends Malik and Jamie, set in a wildly fictional world. Living through the apocalypse is hard, but it's easier with friends. The two friends discuss topics like, what do I do if my ex-boyfriend gets taken over by an alien body snatcher? How worried should I be about sewer alligators reading maps in downtown Chicago? Should I change my office hours to accommodate the vampire student in my class? And what's the deal with that guy showing up in all our old pictures? Learn more about World Gone Wrong at audaciousmediacreative.com. Normal Again also made my honorable mention. I almost put it in the top 5. Another heartbreaking episode. This is the one where the geek trio drugs Buffy more or less using a demon, and she has these flashes where she thinks she's in an institution. And it plays with those questions of reality, of could this all be in Buffy's mind? It pokes a bit of fun at the season, at the geek trio as villains, but really examines where Buffy is emotionally and how hard all of this has been on her. It too is a bleak episode. I still am disturbed with the way it ends because it ends on her in the institution, even though she is more or less back to herself in the reality of Sunnydale. And I've always found that idea really troubling, that it could be that this is all in Buffy's mind. I choose to believe it's simply she hasn't had the full antidote yet, so she has a flash here and there. But seeing her with Joyce and Hank, seeing what is deep in Buffy's heart, is always so powerful and moving to me. Dawn, not my favorite in that episode. Would have liked to seen a very different Dawn, but it is one that always moves me and that I always find fascinating. Finally, the pilot of the entire series, Welcome to the Hellmouth Part 1 and The Harvest Part 2. I had to include this because this is another story that is so tightly written, so perfectly done to me. And it's got so much to do, setting up an entire series, giving us backstory on Buffy. All that exposition comes in so flawlessly through her conflict with her mother, with Principal Flutie, with Giles when he wants her to be the Slayer, gives her that vampire book, and she leaves. And then seeing Buffy, as she, much as she tries, can't turn her back on being a Slayer. Even before Willow is in danger, there's a student who's killed, and Buffy goes to check it out and then goes to tell Giles about it. And she claims it's to tell him she doesn't care. But clearly she does. We learned so much about Buffy so quickly. We meet Angel, who is one of the flaws in season 1 in the sense that mostly he just turns up, acts cryptic, looks gorgeous, and leaves. But this is the first introduction of him, and it works the best in this episode because he's supposed to be cryptic. We're not supposed to know who he is, if he's really on Buffy's side or not, or at least to what extent he's on Buffy's side. And we meet Giles. His character is developed a great deal more later on. I think Giles changes quite a bit. If they knew where he was going, it's not that apparent from here, but you just have to love Giles from the beginning. The tension between him and Buffy is perfect. He is so stayed so by the book, we think, in the beginning, and Buffy is so not those things, and it's a wonderful conflict, and none of it feels false. And Buffy's choices are so well motivated, from finally going to save Willow and confront the vampires, from Buffy's devastation that Cordelia finds out, sort of thinks Buffy is weird when Buffy thought she was going to fit into this new school. So many things going on, and that friendship between Buffy and Willow and Xander being established and helping Buffy go forward. So those are my honorable mentions. There are so many episodes that could have gone on this list. I could do a whole podcast about it. So here we are at the bottom 5 of the episode. These two, more or less a tier, although the first two I'm going to mention are definitely my very least favorite. Beer Bad, because it is such a goofy episode that, for all the reasons I talked about in the podcast on it, although I struggle a little more because now that I did really dive into it in the podcast, I like it much better. It does do quite a bit to get Buffy finally over her devastation about Parker, which ultimately I think had more to do with Angel leaving her and having to process that grief. But it does get her past that. And it is sort of nice to see Buffy just having fun and drinking with these guys. Ultimately, it is the caveman aspect that doesn't work for me. I like the idea of this warlock in the bar putting something in the beer to change them, but it is so clunky in so many ways that it is still one of my least favorite to rewatch. However, there is one that I like even less, which is Where the Wild Things Are. That's the one where Riley and Buffy pretty much have sex the whole episode, and they're powering this kind of like poltergeists in the frat house, which all goes back to the old lady who ran this home for kids and punished them, it seems, for something to do with their sexuality. The whole episode I just find kind of gross. I did enjoy a comment on Reddit about this episode, and I wish I could tell you who made it, but the person is deleted, so it just has the comment. It says, quote, "The episode would have been greatly improved if it was just 40 minutes of Giles playing guitar and singing," end quote. And that does highlight one of the things I loved in the episode, which was seeing Giles singing in the coffee house. And I loved how Willow and Tara reacted to it. Another least favorite is Him. It is pretty far down there for me. That's the one where Dawn falls in love with the guy in the Letterman jacket. I just did an episode about that this season, so I won't go into all the reasons again. But it is definitely one I would love to just skip entirely and lift right out of the season. And you could, because it does not do anything at all for the arc of the season. Now, obviously, that isn't my main criteria because some of these other episodes also don't. But that one, just cringe all over the place. And other than, I do sort of enjoy Anya in the episode. Dead Man's Party, also not a big favorite of mine. It is in my bottom 5 list. That is the one with the zombies. When Buffy comes back in season 3 and all her friends are awful to her. Someone else on Reddit, I didn't quote the comment, but noted that one of the issues is there's no real resolution to the conflict between Buffy and her friends. And I'm sure I said that or something like it when I went through the episode on the podcast. Buffy and friends and Buffy and her mom, they have confrontations. They have that shouting match at the end of the party. And then the zombies break in, everyone fights the zombies together, and that is supposed to have resolved, I guess, their interpersonal conflict. And it feels really unsatisfying because it really doesn't. It's nice to see the group as a team again. And for sure, sometimes conflict gets worked out that way. You don't necessarily always talk it through, but it really felt like they needed to do that. Buffy's friends were terrible to her, despite knowing at the very least that Angel must be dead. I don't know if she told them she killed him at that point or not. They didn't know that he had been re-ensouled before she did it, but surely they could guess that it was hard. I do think they were processing their own feelings about Buffy being gone, about worrying about her, about feeling abandoned, particularly Willow. So they had a lot too. And Willow and Buffy do have a conversation about that. But there isn't enough there for me. I wanted them to apologize to Buffy. I wanted Buffy to apologize to them. I wanted Buffy and her mom to have a genuine conversation. None of these would have to be long. You could have done it fairly quickly or done it in the following action. But instead, we get the zombies and Buffy killing her mother's friend, Pat. Part of me doesn't want to make that a critique because I like that Buffy uses action and zombies and demons and vampires as metaphors for interpersonal problems, but it just did not land in that one. Finally, another of my bottom 5 is Wrecked. That is the second one with Willow, where the addiction metaphor is super strong. Second one, when Amy is back and they go to Rax, and Rax has Willow up on the ceiling and she sees that demon, and she has gone into Rax while leaving Dawn out in the waiting room. So much I just didn't love about that whole storyline and the way the metaphor shifts to addiction or drugs being what magic is about. And of course, I do not love Dawn in season 6. That episode is the epitome of all of that and is one of my absolute least favorites to watch. In fact, I would rather watch Dead Man's Party than Wrecked. And probably the other ones are kind of a toss-up. Maybe Beer Bad, because there is some genuine fun in it. Wrecked, there is almost nothing. I guess I would have to say nothing in it that appeals to me. My honorable mentions for worst Buffy episodes, Double Meat Palace. Just not a fan of the whole wig lady and the demon that comes out of her head. It felt so wedged in at the end. Although I do enjoy some of the humor of that episode. The pack from, pretty sure that's season 1 with the hyena people. There is a lot there that I like. I love Willow in the episode. It's sort of interesting to see Xander being possessed, but so much time is spent with the other members of the pack who don't interest me at all. And we don't deal at all with the trauma they must have gone through after killing the principal and presumably eating some of him at least, and they ate that pig. It's early on in the series, so I feel like it was just meant to be this one-off. We weren't supposed to be thinking about these students, but just not one I really enjoy revisiting. Other than, as with so many in those early seasons, I really do enjoy Willow, Xander, and Buffy and seeing them deal with things and get to know each other better and better. From season 6, As You Were, the one where Sam comes back, that gets an honorable mention for almost making it into the bottom 5, largely because Sam's character is so not really a character. And as I talked about, she has no layers, and she's just written to be too perfect, written just to make Buffy feel bad about herself. And I struggle with the Buffy-Riley relationship, and As You Were really highlights the issues I have with it. Plus, I don't love how the whole Spike issues play out in it. The one moment, I'm sure there are other moments I like too, but the one moment I really do love is at the end when Buffy breaks up with Spike, only because this is such a key moment for her. Buffy feels bad about herself being in love with Spike, or whatever she is. I don't think she is saying she's in love with him at that point, but she feels bad about herself being involved with him. So it is a big step for her to be able to break it off. Another least favorite, which may be because of recency bias, because we just talked about this, but honorable mention for that is The Killer in Me. There is a lot that works in it. I like the general idea of Willow having to struggle with being in this new relationship with her feelings about Tara and Tara's death and grief. Yet that lack of understanding about what she has resolved or why still bothers me, and I struggle so much with Kennedy that it is there as my least favorite. Now, if I hadn't just addressed it, maybe it wouldn't stick in my mind so much. I want to qualify all of the bottom 5 and the honorable mentions because even the least favorite Buffy episodes have so many great moments in them, so much good storytelling, character work, plot, theme, that they are still stronger than most stories I see on TV or read. I still find so much in them every time I rewatch. And that is the great strength of Buffy as a series, that there is so much there, so many layers that you can do, as I've been doing, revisit it and learn so much from it and enjoy it so much, even in the episodes where some things don't quite land. As I said, I would love to hear your top 5 and bottom 5 Buffy episodes. Please feel free to comment or to send them to me at buffystorypod@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone for listening for another year to Buffy in the Art of Story, and a special thank you to the patrons who continue to support the podcast. Come back in 2 weeks as we cross over to Angel Season 4, Episode 13, Salvage, where Wesley brings Faith to LA to help fight the newly unensouled and jealous. You can find back Buffy in the Art of Story episodes, as well as the Buffy in the Art of Story books and all my fiction and nonfiction at lisalilly.com. For more Buffy in the Art of Story content, early releases of regular podcast episodes, and access to my course, How to Plot Your Novel from Idea to First Draft, join the Patreon community at patreon.com/Lisa M. Lilly. That's patreon.com/LISA, M as in Marie, LILLY. Music for this episode was written and performed by Robert Newcastle. Buffy in the Art of Story is a production of Spiny Woman, LLC, copyright 2024. All rights reserved.